In 2018, Detective Simone Harris was a 34-year-old veteran officer with the Phoenix Police Department. After more than a decade on the force, she had earned a solid reputation for being methodical, committed, and remarkably dependable in high-pressure situations. That same year, Simone was assigned a new partner, Officer Brianna Cole, a vibrant, quick-witted officer in her late 20s. Though Brianna had only been with the department for 5 years, she was already making waves for her sharp instincts and fearless attitude. Their pairing seemed ideal, grounded in mutual respect and a shared sense of duty. In October, Brianna invited Simone over for dinner. It was a casual gesture, just two partners getting to know each other outside the station. Brianna had recently moved in with her husband, Malik Cole, a 35-year-old IT specialist who worked for a local cybersecurity firm. At work, Brianna often mentioned how supportive Malik was and how strong their 7-year marriage was. Simone, who lived alone and rarely socialized outside of work, welcomed the opportunity for connection. She accepted the invitation without hesitation. The dinner took place in a modest yet warm home in Scottsdale, Arizona. At first, the evening was lighthearted. Conversations about funny cases, shared frustrations with paperwork, and talk of hobbies. But everything shifted when Malik entered the room. Simone hadn't thought much about meeting Brianna's husband. Her focus had always been on her career. Personal relationships rarely made it onto her radar. Yet the moment she and Malik were introduced, something unspoken passed between them, a connection neither expected. Malik had a calm, grounded presence that contrasted with Brianna's vibrant energy. His voice was smooth, his conversation thoughtful, and his confidence quietly disarming. As the evening went on, Simone found herself inexplicably drawn to him. She noticed his attentiveness, his sharp wit, and the way his eyes occasionally lingered on her. Malik, too, seemed to feel the subtle current between them. Though he remained loyal to Brianna and never crossed a line, his interactions with Simone gradually became warmer, more engaged. It didn't escape Simone's notice that his interest in their conversations went beyond politeness. Sometimes, when Brianna stepped away, a heavy silence would settle between them, thick with tension and unspoken thoughts. By the end of the year, Simone was emotionally entangled. She knew it was wrong, but she couldn't stop herself from thinking about Malik, or seeking out chances to see him again. The guilt gnawed at her, but so did the pull. Each moment spent with Malik left her both exhilarated and ashamed. She tried to convince herself it was innocent. Nothing had happened. No one was being hurt. Maybe, she reasoned, the feelings would fade. But by early 2019, their paths began to cross more frequently, justified by work. Brianna, busy with administrative responsibilities, often left Simone to handle certain investigations solo. Malik's expertise in cybersecurity became valuable during cases that required technical input, giving Simone a legitimate reason to contact him directly. The first such case arose in February 2019, when a local bank reported a series of attempted cyber attacks. Brianna was tied up with another case, and Simone was assigned to lead the investigation. Knowing she needed someone skilled in digital forensics, she immediately thought of Malik. He agreed to assist without hesitation. Their initial collaboration was strictly professional. Simone appreciated Malik's knowledge, and he admired her investigative prowess. But long hours spent poring over files and data gave way to personal conversation. They began to open up in ways neither had expected. Malik confided in Simone about the pressure at work, the frustrations of leading a team, the exhaustion, and how it was slowly straining his marriage. Simone listened closely, a mix of empathy and unease stirring inside her. It was clear that Brianna and Malik's marriage wasn't as perfect as it appeared. As the days passed, their connection deepened. Simone knew she was betraying Brianna, not through actions but through intent. She told herself she needed to pull away, to create distance before they went too far. But each time she saw Malik, her resolve weakened. The chemistry between them was undeniable. Resisting it felt nearly impossible. Malik was equally conflicted. He'd never imagined feeling this way about anyone other than his wife, but Simone was different. She understood him, on a deeper level. Their shared experiences in law enforcement only strengthened the bond. He began to wonder what life might have been like had they met under different circumstances. Over the next few months, they continued working together on multiple cases. Their meetings no longer needed excuses, collaboration was expected. But the nature of their relationship had shifted. Conversations grew more intimate. Silences hung heavier, thick with longing neither dared speak aloud. Then came April. They were partnered again, this time on a complex case involving a digital fraud ring. The investigation required long hours and late nights. One evening, as they sat alone in a dimly lit office surrounded by case files and coffee cups, the air between them felt electric. Simone felt it. She knew Malik did too. Their eyes met. The moment lingered. And for a heartbeat she thought he might say something real. But he didn't. As spring turned to summer, the emotional toll began to weigh heavily on Simone. She struggled to focus. Her thoughts were constantly consumed by Malik. She told herself it had to stop. That she couldn't keep going down this path. But she was already in too deep. Caught between loyalty and desire, professionalism and passion, Simone was spiraling. And she knew, sooner or later, something had to give. Malik was struggling too. His marriage to Brianna, once a source of strength and joy, had started to feel like a burden, an obligation he no longer looked forward to. He couldn't shake the feeling that his connection with Simone was stronger, more genuine, than anything he'd experienced in years. Still, the thought of betraying Brianna held him back. He had built a life with her, made promises he wasn't ready to break. And yet, the emotional affair that had grown between him and Simone was undeniable. By the fall of 2019, Simone was drowning in her feelings for Malik. What had started as a simple work friendship had evolved into something deeper, something she could no longer control or ignore. Every time she saw Malik and Brianna together, it ignited a firestorm of jealousy in her chest. It wasn't just desire, it was resentment. Brianna, in Simone's eyes, wasn't just Malik's wife anymore. She was an obstacle. A wall standing between her and the life she longed for. Watching them share laughs or quiet moments felt like a blade twisting inside Simone. She began to compare herself to Brianna constantly, convincing herself that she was the better match for Malik, the woman who could truly make him happy. But it went beyond envy. For Simone it felt like an injustice. She believed she and Malik shared something rare, something Brianna could never understand. As she spent more time around them, Simone became convinced Malik was trapped in a marriage that no longer served him. And in her mind, Brianna was the only thing standing in the way of their happiness. That jealousy slowly twisted into something darker. Simone began to fixate on Brianna, not just as a colleague or friend, but as a rival. She scrutinized her every move, every word, every interaction with Malik. She no longer saw Brianna as a teammate, but as someone she needed to outmaneuver, even eliminate. At first, the thoughts were fleeting, intrusive whispers during moments of weakness. But soon they became more persistent. She'd lie awake at night replaying moments between Malik and Brianna in her head, wondering what life would be like if Brianna simply weren't in the picture. The thoughts frightened her, at first. She'd never considered herself capable of such ideas. But the more she let her imagination wander, the more the notion began to feel reasonable. She pictured a future with Malik. Just the two of them, free from secrecy, free from guilt. No more stolen glances. No more pretending. In her mind, it all seemed so clear. If Brianna were gone, everything else would fall into place. Despite these dark fantasies, Simone hadn't taken any action, yet. She knew how dangerous her thoughts had become. As a trained officer, she understood better than anyone the consequences of even contemplating such a thing. But the logical part of her was slowly being overpowered by emotion. Her love for Malik, her hatred for Brianna, her frustration at being so close to something she could never have, it all festered beneath the surface. Every time she saw Malik with his wife, her temper flared. She became snappier with Brianna during shifts, overreacting to minor mistakes or disagreements. It infuriated Simone that Brianna didn't seem to notice the storm brewing right under her nose. She was blind to the tension, blind to the bond between Simone and Malik, and that only made Simone angrier. Though Simone hadn't yet devised a specific plan, she began to think more seriously about how to remove Brianna from the equation. She noticed things she hadn't before, times when Brianna was alone, vulnerable. Scenarios where an accident could be made to look natural. Her police training gave her knowledge most people didn't have. She knew how investigations were run. She knew how to stage a scene, how to cover tracks. It wouldn't take much, she thought, to make a tragedy look like a misstep. A routine call gone wrong. A fall. A gun misfire. These thoughts once made her shudder. Now she found them strangely comforting. She told herself she wasn't planning anything, just exploring possibilities, considering outcomes. But deep down, Simone knew the truth. If the right moment came along, she might not be able to stop herself. The jealousy had consumed her. It clouded her judgment and pushed her toward a dangerous precipice. By late 2019, her dark fantasies were no longer just flashes in her mind. They had become deliberate considerations. Simone started studying Brianna more closely, her habits, her routines, her vulnerabilities. And by early 2020, the fantasies had evolved into something chillingly real. She began crafting a scenario. One that would look like a tragic accident. One that wouldn't raise suspicion. One that could free Malik and herself from the prison of silence and guilt. Simone Harris, decorated officer and trusted partner, was now carefully, quietly laying the groundwork for a perfect crime. The key was timing. Simone Harris knew that a high-risk situation would be the perfect cover, an opportunity for something to go wrong without raising suspicion. In March 2020, she got exactly what she had been waiting for. A call came in about an armed robbery. It was the kind of chaos she needed. A shootout would create just enough confusion to conceal her true intentions. Her plan was simple: make it look like Brianna was caught in the crossfire. It would require precision, split-second execution, and absolute control. But Simone was confident. She had rehearsed this moment in her mind countless times, and now, everything was falling into place. In the days leading up to the robbery, Simone distanced herself from Brianna. She kept things strictly professional, no emotional slips, no unnecessary conversation. She couldn't afford mistakes. She had spent too long preparing for this moment. The night before the assignment, Simone lay in bed staring at the ceiling, mentally reviewing every step of the plan. She knew the store's layout, understood the likely behavior of the suspect, and had played out every possible outcome in her head. By now, it all felt second nature. All that was left was to execute. On the day of the call, Simone arrived at the precinct calm and composed. She greeted Brianna as usual, though there was a cold detachment in her tone. At the scene, tension hung in the air like smoke. The suspect was armed, the situation volatile. Simone stayed close behind Brianna, her heart pounding, not from fear but from anticipation. She was waiting. In the chaos, she knew she could move without anyone noticing. All it would take was one carefully timed shot and the moment would be gone, just like that. On March 15, 2020, Simone and Brianna were dispatched to a convenience store in Dayton, Ohio, responding to an armed robbery in progress. The store was located in a quiet suburban neighborhood not far from the station. But what awaited them was anything but ordinary. The suspect was reported to be armed and had taken the store clerk hostage, demanding cash from the register. As they approached, both officers knew how quickly the situation could spiral out of control. Simone's pulse raced, but not from nerves. She was ready. She had planned every second of this. The store was narrow, the aisles lined with shelves that blocked visibility. The suspect was behind the counter, partially hidden. Simone and Brianna crouched low, using a nearby shelf for cover. Brianna, as the senior officer, took command. She motioned for Simone to follow her lead as they slowly moved toward the entrance. "Drop your weapon. Hands where I can see them," Brianna shouted. The suspect, a man in his late 20s, was panicked, sweating, and unpredictable. His gun remained aimed at the terrified clerk. Simone kept her eyes locked on Brianna's back, waiting for the exact moment. The adrenaline surged. The tension, the danger, it was the perfect storm. Brianna remained focused on calming the suspect, unaware of the danger right behind her. As the suspect jerked his weapon toward the officers, Brianna stepped slightly forward into the open. That was Simone's moment. With steady hands and a sharp breath, Simone raised her weapon and pulled the trigger. The gunshot echoed like thunder in the small store. Brianna lurched forward, her body convulsing from the impact as the bullet tore through her back. In a blink, Simone shifted her aim and fired toward the suspect. Her bullet struck the shelves nearby, not him. But in the chaos, it didn't matter. It looked, and sounded, like the shot had come from the suspect. The gunman, startled and disoriented, returned fire wildly in Simone's direction. His erratic shots only strengthened her story. To everyone else, it was a textbook gunfight gone wrong. It was over in seconds. Brianna collapsed, blood spilling beneath her as her body crumpled to the floor. Simone radioed for backup, her voice steady, composed. "Officer down. Officer down. Shots fired. Suspect is armed." She delivered the message with urgency, careful to conceal the truth behind the tragedy. As other units arrived, Simone knelt beside Brianna, pressing her hands to the wound. To any observer, she looked like a desperate partner trying to save a fallen friend. Her expression was a perfect mix of fear and grief. But inside she felt nothing. She kept pressure on the wound, knowing full well it was futile. Brianna's breaths were shallow, her life slipping away by the second. Within minutes she was gone. Paramedics rushed in, but it was too late. They confirmed what Simone already knew. Brianna Cole was dead. As investigators combed the scene for evidence, Simone stood apart, her face etched with sorrow. But in her mind she was replaying the moment, the shot, the fall, the aftermath. She had crossed a line, pulled the trigger, ended a life. And no one would ever know. The guilt that had haunted her in the weeks leading up to this day had vanished, replaced by a strange, cold numbness. She had done what she believed needed to be done. Brianna was gone. And now nothing stood between Simone and Malik. It was a twisted kind of logic, but to Simone it made perfect sense. She had eliminated the obstacle that stood between her and the future she craved. The official report, filed later that night, labeled the incident as a tragic line-of-duty shooting. According to the statement, Brianna had been struck by a bullet from the suspect's gun during the firefight. Simone had done all she could to save her. Investigators found the suspect's weapon had been fired, supporting Simone's version of events. It was an open and shut case. Later that night, as Simone drove home, the weight of her actions settled in. She had taken a life, not in self-defense, not out of fear, but from cold, calculated desire. And for Simone Harris there was no turning back. She had done it. Simone Harris had orchestrated the death of her partner, someone she had worked alongside for years, someone who had trusted her without question. And in her twisted logic, it was all worth it. Brianna Cole was gone. And now Simone could move forward, closer to Malik and closer to the life she had always imagined for them. In the weeks following Brianna's funeral, Malik leaned heavily on Simone for comfort. To everyone around them it seemed natural, two people bonded by shared grief, finding solace in each other. But for Simone there was something darker beneath it all. A grim satisfaction. Her plan had worked flawlessly. She was now in Malik's orbit, positioned as the only person who truly understood his pain. But even as she savored her success, a quiet unease began to creep in. Unbeknownst to Simone, whispers were already circulating through the department. Some investigators had noticed subtle inconsistencies in the case. The angle of the bullet that killed Brianna didn't quite match the suspect's position during the shootout. At first it was chalked up as a minor irregularity, an unfortunate detail in a chaotic scene. But as more forensic evidence came in, the questions became harder to ignore. Simone's behavior after the shooting also raised eyebrows. Though her grief had appeared convincing, there were moments, small, fleeting moments, where she seemed almost too composed, too controlled. The real turning point came when investigators obtained surveillance footage from a nearby store. While the camera didn't capture the shooting inside the convenience store, it did record the seconds before and after. What it showed didn't align with Simone's official statement. She had claimed to be directly behind Brianna, firing at the suspect at the moment her partner was struck. But the footage told a different story. Simone had approached from a different angle. Her movements were too precise, almost calculated, as if she were positioning herself for something. On April 10, 2020, nearly a month after Brianna's death, Simone was summoned to the station under the pretense of a routine follow-up interview. When she arrived, she was met by two detectives from Internal Affairs. They asked her to recount the events of the shooting once more, pressing her for details. Simone could feel the pressure building in the room, but she held to her original story. Until they showed her the footage. Then came the ballistics report. It revealed that the fatal bullet's trajectory didn't align with the suspect's weapon. It was at that moment Simone realized she had made a fatal mistake, one overlooked detail that unraveled everything. The forensics didn't lie. Within hours, the truth surfaced. The investigators had enough to arrest Simone Harris for the murder of her partner. The trial that followed was brutal. The prosecution painted a chilling picture, how Simone had slowly, methodically plotted Brianna's death. How she'd used the robbery as a cover, orchestrating the shooting with deadly precision. They presented damning evidence, forensic reports, surveillance footage, and testimony from fellow officers who had begun to question her actions. The jury listened in disbelief as the pieces fell into place. Simone Harris, once a respected officer, was now exposed as a manipulative killer. For Malik, the trial was a waking nightmare. He had already lost his wife. Now he had to confront an even crueler reality. The woman who had comforted him, stood by him, cried with him, was the very one who had taken Brianna's life. The betrayal cut deeper than anything he'd ever felt. He sat through every day of the trial, hollow-eyed and silent. He couldn't comprehend how everything had unraveled so completely. On May 24, 2021, the jury returned a unanimous verdict. Guilty. Simone Harris was sentenced to life in prison without the possibility of parole. As she was led away in cuffs, she looked toward Malik one last time. He didn't speak. He didn't meet her gaze. There was nothing left to say. His world had been shattered by the one person he had come to trust. And in that final moment, as Simone was taken away, she felt the full weight of her choices. She hadn't just killed Brianna Cole. She had destroyed every possibility of the life she had wanted with Malik. Now she would spend the rest of her days behind bars, haunted by the reality of what she had done. And Malik Cole? He was left to pick up the pieces, alone, broken, and betrayed by the two people he had loved the most. Join us as we continue to bring you more stories of crime. Keep watching. And be sure to subscribe so you never miss a moment of the story. This is Ruthless Realities. Until next time.